SVG.
60 minutes on to 11 o'clock here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You're locked on to WEFM 99.9, the clean fresh sound. And this is your It's Your Turn program. Remember, It's Your Turn is an interactive program. So the numbers to call are 457-9997 if you're calling from a local landline, 532-9997 if you're calling from a digital cell phone, or you can call us or send us a message on WhatsApp at 457-9997. The It's Your Turn program is being hosted by Mr. Cecil Ryan and Mr. Philbert John. Good morning to you, Cecil.
Good morning to you, Karen, and good morning to Philbert. It's good to be with our partners and listeners and followers another Sunday morning. Today is Sunday, June 29. A number of things are scheduled for today. We're starting a bit late and we do apologize. But we've been here just getting a few things in place in preparation for the discussion, which is going to be focused on the results of the CPEA. And also we're going to look at the broader question of the growth and expansion of educational opportunities here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And to be part of that discussion, to help us along, we'll be having later on in the program, not too long from now, I hope, Minister of Education, the Honorable Curtis King. And still later on, we're going to be having, via video link up, Professor Justin Marshall Robinson, who was here earlier late last week, really, to address the ceremony of the passing out, the graduation ceremony of those 900 folks who graduated from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College. So he will be on later on with us this morning to address the topic, as well as Minister King in studio. So Pigeon, greetings.
Yes, good morning, Cecil. Good morning to all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and to all persons listening to WEFM, wherever you are in neighboring territories in the wider diaspora. Good morning. And as usual, we look forward to another interesting discussion. I could begin by just simply, for now, as we will go into more details, extend congratulations to all the students who wrote the CPA examination, and especially to those who were very outstanding, who did very well. That will be the focus of our discussion this morning. And as Cecil said, the wider discussion on opportunities in education in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It ought to be exciting, and we want you to listen and to contribute if you can to our discussion.
So Pigeon, as I indicated, for our listeners' benefit, Joel Will is not in this morning. I believe he's otherwise engaged. But we're here, and later on we will be having Minister King and Professor Robinson. And I just want to give a loud shout up, very warm shout up to Prime Minister Gonzalez. I suspect he may call us a bit later on as well in the program. So I just want to give him a hail up. And talking about hailing up, and on my way in this morning, I went to check out our good partner and comrade Kojo Mason, to collect some items from him. While I was waiting for Kojo to come down, a gentleman was passing, so I asked him if he knew who Kojo is. So he said yes, and he was giving me some other things. So he was saying he heard Kojo saying he's coming here in this on radio in this week. So I was smiling, and then he said, I asked him if he listens to the program. He said yes, he listens every week. He listens to It's Your Hand.
Yeah.
So he didn't know who I was. So he said, "You are Cecil Ryan?" So I said, "Yes." So he smiled and said he was leaving. He was just leaving work, heading up to Rockies where he lives. Um, so I just want to give him a shout out this morning. I just find it interesting that coincidentally, he was just walking, and it happens all the time, as you know, it happens to us all the time. We bounce into people who routinely listen to the program. I also want to give a special shout out to Miss Harold this morning. I know she's feeling good this morning for certain reasons, which I won't say, but I want to give Miss Harold a shout out. And this Vinci today is the day for semifinals, Calypso semifinals, happening at the cruise ship berth. I expect the competition to be very tense. I hope all the competitors are well prepared, because the competition is going to be stiff, and I'm sure they all would be vying to get into the final, which is will happen next week. So yeah, that's what's happening right now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I see a lot of visitors in town. They look like visitors. I don't know. I'm not sure if they're all visitors, those whom I have seen. But I've seen a lot of visitors in town. I myself have relatives coming in today, in fact, from the UK. So it seems Vincy Mass is living up to its name, hottest and best summer festival, if you like, in the Caribbean. It's living up to its name. Again, you have to give kudos to those who are involved in the CDC leadership now, in particular, Randy, and his team, of course, and they're doing a wonderful job. And it's good for tourism, good for the culture and all of that. Some of the sayings I don't like, but I mean, that's where it's at. Culture is part of the culture, very dynamic. Things are changing. It's not like when we used to, well, at least when I used to frequent all the shows in the 80s and even into the 90s. Now I try to watch them on television. And in talking about watching on television, I saw some aspects of Junior Carnival yesterday.
Yeah, I was about to ask you if you took in any of that.
I took in some of it. That's when I was able to get back. Oh, I have to talk about this particular issue to do with flow, because many of us were not able to take in. Well, certainly not the cricket. Maybe it's a good thing we didn't get the chance to take in the cricket. But certainly West Indies cricket, West Indies Australia test match. But certainly Junior Carnival, a lot of people didn't get to take it in, and I didn't see it until I got my signal up and going yesterday, after I was advised how to get back the signal. And talking about that pigeon, a lot of people, and I think you said you yourself,
Yeah,
the last,
still affected.
yeah, no signal since Thursday 4 the morning. It happened all Thursday, all Friday, all Saturday, and I believe even now, you don't have your signal up, and I think I can't believe it that Flow, a company that deals with communication, they could not, they have not yet seen it fit to communicate to subscribers how to reactivate their boxes. Actually, it involves you scanning the box and then following up a certain set of procedure, and you get the signal. It's as simple as that. Yesterday, I saw stuff on my phone from Flow promoting shows and other things, and that's a simple thing that they could do. And at least, in fact, I was listening to Activated Morning on Friday. I don't know if you were listening to at the time, Peter. And I heard somebody called in calling in from, I think it was Brighton, I think it was Brighton, making the point that he he was a victim, and perhaps still is a victim, and he was asking the folks on Activated Morning how, while he was making it public that he didn't have signal, and it was actually he also said that he called Flo but didn't get the proper attention. In fact, I think he said he didn't get any connection. He didn't get any connection with Flo, and it is a simple matter of rescanning the box. Some people may know, or some people may have done that, but a lot of people, since myself included, since Friday for the morning, still waiting on Flo. All of Thursday, all of Friday, and part of Saturday, I dare sitting down waiting on Flo. I mean, it's like a laugh, because the person who advised, who got the information, it was all, we were all laughing in a way, but I was angry, because that's 3 days that I mean, in my case, I pay Flo $200 and almost $300 per month for the service. And when you really break that down, it's about the credit that I have lost for that. It's about $25-$30, and Flo should take responsibility for that, and for all the many subscribers who have not been able to get the benefit of the box. And in fact, I believe some people from far countries, Chateaubalay and Sandy Bay and Fancy, I would not be surprised if they pay how much money to come into town tomorrow, if they haven't done it yet, to check Flo, to line up, to check Flo on that. And it's a simple thing of scanning the box, which Flo could have gone on any program and explained, any radio program. I just find it amazing. But anyway, in my view, when Flo reapplies for a license, again, those are issues that the NTRC needs to take into consideration. Flo, given their history, is not, in my view, they're not a responsible corporate citizen. I mean, simple thing that doesn't even have to reach top management to scan a box. Simple instructions. And if there are people who still, and even as I'm saying so, I'm seeing here somebody saying the same problem in Beckway, and the person is asking, how do we scan the box? Simple, tell us and we'll do it. I wasn't going to do it, but the person who's asking the question, in fact, I'll send the instruction. I know the person. I'll send the thing to her. That's Flo's responsibility. That's Flo's responsibility. But I guess for the sake of people who want to watch Vincy Mas, aspects of Vincy Mas, I might share it. Not might. I will share. I will say what it is. But it is certainly ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's irresponsible. So, Peter, I'm sorry to start off on that note, but because
that's important. No need to be sorry for that.
Yeah, I mean, I laughed at myself yesterday when I got the thing, but I mean, somebody's calling Pigeon, so let's just hear what this person has to say. Good morning. You're on It's Your Turn.
Yes. Oh, good morning, WEFM.
Yes.
Yeah, apropos Flo and their absolute uselessness in this whole episode. It took me over 20 minutes of dialing on Thursday to try and find out Friday, if anybody could answer me. No choice. Then the young lady did answer, and she said, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with anything. Everything is fine. It must be you. We'll send a technician. So anyway, I said, okay. And then infuriated because my husband wants to see cricket. I tried again about an hour later, and I actually got another young lady who was actually very helpful. And she said, oh, no, you have to go into settings, and you change the megahertz, and do blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. I did that. And eventually I got back my picture. But, I mean, lucky me, because nobody seemed to know anything in Flow as to what was going on, whether it's Monday or Sunday. Nobody could tell you anything. And in my view, not only that, having got back my picture, 4 channels are missing. So how am I going to get any reparation for this? Because it seems as though Flow would rather sell you all kinds of packages than deal with the actual problems that they have. And not only that, if they're a communication company, they can't communicate. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling. Yeah, it's just amazing, and it's so disappointing. You know, a company that deals with communication and does communicate on people's phone, share promotional stuff for other entities, they could not see that they have a responsibility. And in fact, I don't know if somebody, what happened, this issue, this problem seemed to have occurred the same time for most people on Thursday morning. I have a call coming in, Pijan. Let's go to the call. And good morning. Welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning. Well, Flow for me is a waste of time.
First of all, do you have the problem? Do you have the problem?
Yes. Well, I can tell you now.
No, and was it solved? Did you get it solved?
No. Well, I go there with my phone, and I dey line up outside in the hot sun. So when I go inside now, I wanted some water. So I leave and go around by Mr. Caddy, a friend of mine, the lawyer friend, to get some water. When I come back, the lady who was behind me, I meet she and she had to take my place because I wasn't there. When I for going out, the lady said, well, I wasn't behind this fella here, so he's to come in now. The lady come and tell me if I did want water, I should have asked them for water. I said, but all the crazy because look, Bonfan they down there, and Bonfan don't have no crowd like all, and Bonfan have a water fountain there, and other place have a water fountain there. You know, so I go there now and asking them, well, my phone, my TV had gone bad. So
it's the box, not the TV, the box.
My phone, right?
The box, the cable box.
The cable box I still have it at my house here because
No, hear me. It's a cable box that needed to be rescanned.
That too. So then after that, go back to I take the monthly one on my phone because I had a cable back from them. But what happened really after good thing on the phone, my TV go bad. I did to get one from Canada, but I ain't get it yet. So then
let's not talk about everything. Let's just talk about the absence of the signal on the TV, because that's what I want to raise this morning. I don't want to have a general discussion on Flow. I just want to raise the question of the signal and urge people to how to get back the signal.
Sometimes I don't know how to get back because
that's what I'm trying to explain to you. You have to rescan the box. You either have to do it yourself or you take it to Flow and they will rescan the box.
Okay, all right.
But I tell you what, if you call back, if you call back the station at the end of the program and ask to speak with me, I would send you the instructions of as to how you can rescan the box.
Okay, all right.
At the end of this program this morning, all right?
Okay.
Call back the station and ask for me, and I will give you the instruction.
Like the 1:30 around there?
About, it depends. Yeah. Once you're listening to the program, you would know when.
Yes, I have time listening, man.
All right, my friend.
I just calling one now and again, too.
And who is this?
Yes.
Who is the person?
Winston Wynn.
Oh, yes. I just... all right, Winston. All right, so call back about 1:30 thereabout, and I'll give you the instructions.
All right, okay.
Okay, good. But that's the problem. Well, we have to... Pijan, you have to shift from Flow and shift to the main topic. And even as we're speaking, The person who has just joined us, and we welcome him very warmly, is our Minister of Education, the Honorable Curtis King. Minister King, greetings and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Cecil. Good morning, Pijan. Good morning,
Morning,
Mr.
good
Sutherland. Good morning to listeners. Well, I should say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever the case might be, because I know WEFM has a broad listenership throughout the world. So, good day. Yes, Cecil, thanks for having me.
Yes, and you walked in when we were having this, raising all kind of disappointment about flow. And I don't know if you are one of the victims, but a lot of people are victims of the fact that last Thursday morning, around 4:30, 5 o'clock, because I was up as usual, I get ready to go exercise. The signal went, a signal on the TV, and I thought Flo would come back and address it before the end of the morning, before the end of the day. It went into the following day, Friday, and say, okay, give them some more time. And then it went into Saturday. And then somebody came by me, and the person has a friend who's a technician at Flow. And when they call, the instructions are, well, I mean, you just have to follow the instructions, and it's basically you're scanning the box. And from the time I did that, I got the signal. And somebody else who called me last evening, who lives alone and who is a senior citizen and wanted to see aspects of Vinci Junior Carnival, couldn't. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's really, really ridiculous.
Cecil, the thing is, I really can't speak with much authority on that issue because I was out of state, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I returned home, I remember, and I think it was late the Friday night, I turned on the TV, and my wife asked me,
"What are you going to watch?"
No.
It's working?
Yeah, it was working when I turned it on, but she was surprised because she said it wasn't working. So I perhaps came in at the time when...
perhaps they saw you come in and fix you.
But I'm aware of the issue because the very next day, I was at the headquarters in Kingston to pay my bills, and I heard persons complaining, but as the extent to which I knew.
But the unfairness is that there are senior citizens who need that for us company. And then you have people in Chateaubelair, somebody just sent this morning. Shut-ins. And from Fancy, people are there waiting and couldn't get, and some of them may have to pay, if they haven't done it yet, pay money to come into town to deal with flow, like the gentleman who just called, he had to line up. I mean, that is not good enough. And then while that is happening, I'm receiving messages from Flo on my phone to say that
you have to pay bills by such a...
No, well, not even to pay bills, to promote shows, promotional things. I mean, something. I hope the NTRC. I would write a letter to the NTRC because they need to know about these things forcefully. Yes, Minister King, sorry about that. So we're happy to have you in studio with us. Yes. And later on, around 11:30, Professor Justin Robinson indicates that he would join us via video link. But in the meantime, you're here and we're happy to engage you, Pijan. You want to begin the engagement with Minister King? Well, I guess first of all, we need to you started it, Pijan, you started to congratulate.
Yes. While you're speaking, Minister King, Curtis, my schoolmate.
Of course, that's something that's one minister.
Sorry, with me, I pay.
Yeah, Pijan.
If you could, in the presentation, go back to the period under which this cohort were prepared, and then eventually set the examination for the CPA. These were the children who were deeply affected by COVID.
Yes.
By COVID, I think they were COVID, and they were also with the volcano, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Pijan, I would start by saying that I don't think there has been another period, when I say period, like a 5-year period in this country's history, where we had so many national disasters. And I call them national because while some might be health related, others due to climate change and other natural phenomena, the truth is that the impact of these various activities has been tremendous on our people. And where the students are concerned, it significantly affected their preparation. Now, let us take this cohort. And by the way, first, because I had erroneously written that they were in grade K. Okay, I changed it subsequently, but I don't know if it went out before I made that correction on the media. But this group was in grade 1. Last year's group was in grade K. And since we have introduced the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, the best performance recorded was last year, 87.68, rounded off at 87.7. And I remember stating that in Parliament. But Pigeon, this group is special. Why? Because although the group that wrote the exams last year recorded the highest percentage pass rate, the fact is that this group, in addition to all the challenges that was faced by last year's group, that is to say COVID-19, the volcanic eruption, Hurricane Elsa, what you call the mosquito-borne disease, that had the students having to wear all sort of covering and so on. I mean, all the challenges they had last year. This year, this group had an extra one. That is to say Beryl. Because when Beryl came last year, that cohort had already written the exams. This year, sorry, when I say last year, I'm talking about the group that wrote the exams last year. When Beryl came, July last year, they had already written the exams. But this cohort this year, they had just completed their grade 5 education and had to go on now to grade 6. And I remember we had some challenges, so many challenges that we had to had a phase opening of school. I put all that into context to say that despite all of these challenges, these students were able to put all of that behind them and recorded very, very good performance. I say excellent performance because their scores of 87.3 roughly is just a little bit less than half point away from the performance of last year. And for that, we have to commend all the stakeholders. And it's true, we always speak to the principals and the leadership at the school. And I extend leadership. Pijan and other educators would understand what I'm speaking about. Because most schools now in the modern period has a management committee that work along with the principal. Okay. So it's not just the principal. So I always make that point as a former principal myself. And the teachers, the parents and guardians, and I don't ever forget this group, the sponsors, and Cecil, you know I'm talking about, because being part, well, both of you, being part of the credit union movement, where we focus a lot on education, you get support from credit unions and other institutions, banks, all sorts of private sector institutions. Right, and other government agencies. And don't forget individuals.
I was just going to
yes, individuals. Yeah. So, and they provide that sort of support. So we have to commend them all. And people don't like to talk about this. I mean, whenever anything goes wrong, you blame the Ministry of Education. But we also have to remember the Ministry of Education too, when you have good things happening, because the Ministry of Education, they are the ones responsible for the system. They are the ones responsible for executing whatever policies the cabinet identifies. So I have to commend also the Chief Education Officer, Permanent Secretary, and the various officials in the Ministry of Education for the role that they play in the whole process. So now, as usual, and that is the challenge, Cecil, always when you have to speak so early when the preliminaries are done. But it is always useful. I mean, as I said, I just came home. I came via Barbados, but I was listening to a discussion in Barbados with some officials, and they were saying, actually, I think there's an article in one of the newspapers where they were asking for deeper analysis of the same grade 6 examination performance that over there in Barbados. And I don't know if you noticed, but the CPEA is an examination that is done in several Caribbean countries, more so in the OECS countries, right? But they also have some countries outside of the OECS. So around this time, if you notice, the media is dominated with the performance of the students. So, I mean, we just have to big up the students. But quickly, Cecil, because I know you would have questions, but I just want to, from my own preliminary assessment that I have made, even while attending meetings overseas, and it isn't always easy to do all of that. But outside of the general or the mean or the average in terms of the performance of the students on a whole, I break down the performance of the students at the school level. And it is interesting to note that 19 of the schools scored 100% pass rate. 17 scored between 90 and 99%. 18 between 80 and 90. Now you have 67 schools who wrote the exams, right? And you calculate what? 46, 46 and, how it go? No, how it go? 19 and 17 and 18, good. 35, 54, roughly, 54 students, yes? Schools recorded pass rates of 80% and above. I mean, that is quite excellent. We still, however, can't relax and be satisfied, because we still have to look at what is happening in the other schools that recorded 70%, between 70% and 80.
And do you have the number?
Yeah, 7.
7 schools.
Right. And those that scored between 60 and 69%, 5. And we had one school that scored 57%. So while it's true, we are happy, and a lot of the focus always seems to go on the top performers. We also have to be conscious that we have to make targeted intervention in areas where we have challenges, because really and truly, I don't believe in this period, given the support that is there for education, that any school should be falling less than 80% performance at that exam. I mean, we should be aiming to see 100% pass in almost every school. But I'm saying, we figure 80, at least I figure 80 is cutoff point. So we have to do the necessary intervention.
But Minister, before you go on to the other striking point, is that are these schools, for example, the one that scored that 57%, are they repeating performances? Or?
Yes, several. Well, I didn't go back into the number of times that school recorded performance, but I know it has been a challenge. Yeah, but several schools, what I know, some schools move up, but some schools are not very consistent. Others are very, very consistent. Okay. So as I'm saying, the officials, we have to look at these issues. I was saying the other striking thing to note, Cecil, and I always have to say this because later on you hear why it is important. I look at the size of the classes. Yes, I know time going, but let's go quickly. I look at the size of the classes. And I break them down. Classes with 10 or less students. And Pijan, this would be of great interest to you too. Classes with less than 10 students. 14 classes with less than 10 students. Talking about several schools. It only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry, 10 or less. 10 or less. 14. Classes with 11.
Classes mean schools.
Well, yeah, it's schools, but what I'm saying, okay, yes, sorry, the schools, and here, sorry, let me go over. I'm speaking here about the population of the schools that is in grade 6,
the cohort,
who
the grade
wrote
6
the
cohort.
exam, right, wrote the examination. So I'm saying 14 schools entered 10 or less students for the examination.
Okay.
34 schools entered between 11 and 25 students. Pijan, that is 48 out of 67 schools. 48 out of 67 schools with 25 or less students, okay, in the grade 6 class. 7 schools entered a number of 26 to 35 students. 3 schools entered classes, a cohort of 36 to 45 students. 6 schools had 46 to 55 students. And 3 schools had over 55 students. And I could identify these schools. C.W. Prescott, 96. Kingston Preparatory School, 108. And the RC, Roman Catholic School, 90. Sorry, they are 96 and C.W. Prescott, 95. And again, and you look at the results, obviously, the schools with the smaller number of students, what we call a high percentage pass rate. That's not to say some schools did not record too high a pass rate who have a low number of students, especially between 26 and 35. But generally, the schools with the small population are those that recorded 100%. In fact, for the larger schools, and we really have to tip our hat off to them. I mean, the Roman Catholic school, they scored 100% pass rate. And prep school was 98. I mean, 98% out of 100. You know, you're talking about one or so person who might not have met the standard. And the C.W. Prescott, 90% pass rate. So, yes, they're doing good. But I repeat, these schools with the smaller population. And I want to say something else. Note, the larger schools are generally in the urban areas, and in particular, Kingston. Okay? And finally, on this issue, in terms of the performance of the schools, that performance was significantly aided by the fact that in every class, and now I'm speaking about classes because grade 6 in a Kingston school might be divided into 4 classes.
So you're talking about students to teacher ratio.
Right. In every class, you would have at least 2 teachers per class. So if you take a school in Kingston that has 4 grade 6 classes, there would be no less than 8 teachers. So that even though the number is high, you see the ratio is still low. And I'm saying a minimum of 8, because you might have some with more than 8. Similarly, you go into some of these small schools and you have 7 students, but 2 teachers are teaching the 7 students. So I'm saying we have also witnessed significant improvement in the teacher to student ratio, and all of that would impact on the performance. But on the other hand, when the performance is not up there, we have to, as I'm saying, find out what is the issue. And I could speak to a number of other initiatives, I think, that have helped over the period. And I would say this one and wait Pijan and Cecil for the conversation to continue. Now, we have took a decision some years ago to improve access and the quality of the teaching of, or if you like, the delivery of the early childhood education. I always like to remind persons that at the turn of the century, there was only 1 out of every 10 child aged between 3 and 5 who would have been attending an early childhood center, an early childhood education center. And now we have almost 9 students out of every 10 attending an early childhood education
And
center.
Minister, to be specific, you said at the turn of the century, I mean 2000?
Yes.
At that time.
Yes. So that we can see that that component of the education revolution is having a significant impact. Because while I spoke
And you talk
to
about
access,
earlier exposure.
I mean, Cecil, you can't build a house if you don't build it on solid foundation and expect it to last. Yes. So we, and basically the data out there show that, look, you have to start as early as possible. But in the Caribbean context, and certainly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines case, for a long time, we did not take early childhood education seriously. And hence, we felt, man, why kill ourselves about that? And that is why so many private sector operators got involved, because they were filling a void.
And for the sake of our listeners, early childhood education refers to pre-kindergarten.
Yeah, what they call
preschool.
Yes. And so that is important. But Cecil, as making the point, as much as we talk about access, what we have done in that period also is to introduce a curriculum, a standard curriculum for preschool operators. And we have moved further. The government itself has established preschools or early childhood education centers. I like calling them that, right? And we are still introducing. We have one on the leeward side coming in onto stream by for the new school year. So we are going up to 18. Now,
Minister, is it possible for you to say which ones are there? Which ones are the 18? Where they're located?
Well, throughout the country. I mean,
all right.
Yes, especially in the rural areas, because what we find that in and around Kingston, although we have one operating in and around Kingston, yes, what we find, the schools in Kingston are perhaps they have more resources, so they tend to be solid.
But you said there's one coming on stream soon.
That one is in Fitzhugh.
Fitzhugh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
So our thing is to work towards 100% access. But I was speaking about quality. Now, so we introduce a curriculum, right? A standard curriculum for these early childhood education centers. Secondly, and very importantly, we have enhanced training for those persons operating in those schools. So now you have an associate degree in early childhood education as well as a degree program. These are being facilitated through our St. Vincent and Grenadines Community College. But of course, we do not deny persons from doing with other institutions. So you have more and more persons. Now, what that has done is that it has forced the preschool to enhance the salaries. You know, government earlier this year passed a minimum wage where you can't pay persons who are working on a monthly basis less than $1,000 per month. You had preschools paying people like $400 a month. Yes, Cecil, you might smile, but it is true. And what we have done with a simple piece of legislation is to enhance the quality, because now you have to pay. If you want persons to come, you have to pay. But more than that, with the introduction of the government early childhood centers, and you have trained persons, when these persons enter the service, if you're going to teach at an early childhood center that is operated by the government, and you come in with an associate degree, you're coming in as a qualified teacher. Happy John?
Yeah.
You are teacher trained, where the salary is in excess of $3,500, $3,600, $700 per month. Now you see what that is doing. Additionally, if you come in with a degree, you are appointed as a graduate. So I'm saying all this is having the impact of improving the system. So you have access, you're providing training, and you're providing enhanced remuneration. And where the government can't do it in the private operated schools, we are setting the example. And forcing them
So Minister, you're saying
and that has an impact on the students' performance too.
There's in every preschool across the country, all teachers make a minimum of $1,000 per month.
No, that is what that is the legislation.
Right.
I can't say that
it is implemented.
It is, right.
Okay.
Because I mean, some of these preschools, and by the way, at one time, about 10 years ago, we had 126 preschools, but the numbers have been reduced now. We just have roughly about 100, right? So you're talking about 80 or so, a little over 80 still operated by private operators. But
those that are privately operated, is the government subsidizing any of them?
All
of
yes,
them?
once they meet certain standards.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So we have standards in terms of numbers, as well as the quality in terms of the environment and so on. Well, we have a standardized curriculum now. So all of that would help us in determining whether or not you're qualified for support. Yes. So I'm saying that is having an impact. One other issue, sorry, because I know this came up, and anyway, let me leave that there and just say that persons who listen to me would know that I have a passion about this issue of no child being left behind, especially as it relates to our children with different what I call it, sometimes I try to be political. Yes, but even now they're saying don't say different label. I just came from a foundational learning activity in Guatemala, and an ex-colleague tell me we have changed now from saying, well, you said differently able to say now children with disabilities. You remember,
so you're going back to that?
Well, when I raised that, what I was told, and this is by a practitioner, right, who was there, he himself is a person with what you call it, disabilities. Okay. He told me, no, you're not going back. What we used to say, disabled children. And he's saying that is different from saying children with disabilities. So I say it makes sense. So I think I have to add that now. But the point is though, I have been strong on this issue that we have persons with disabilities who can within the right environment, perform and perform just as good. Whether they are within the regular school or they are with what we call special needs education institution. And throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have students at schools, primary and secondary, who have disabilities. I can tell you that in Georgetown, for example, we have 4 students, 2 of them hearing impaired and 2 of them blind. I'm not talking about visually impaired, blind. In Adelphi, close to you, Cecil, your original home. Yes, we have a student there who is visually impaired. I'm talking about secondary school. So they had to produce to be. And as I said, in the case of Georgetown before, those students, when they entered Form 1, they were in the top stream based on their performance. Because once you give them the support, they'll do well. Fair Hall Primary School is a popular school. And I have to big up Miss Sharon Morgan, because I remember she was the principal there. When a simple project started, she took 1 student, and like me and like others, they discovered that, boy, the student with some help could perform.
Incidentally, Minister, I have a relative, Faith.
Well, I ain't reached to Faith yet, because everybody knows about Faith. And I have already put the officials on notice to put all the things in place to make sure that Faith gets the school of her choice, because I believe that Faith is going to do excellently. I mean, every indication is there.
She is good.
This girl is talented, and I mean, she has received international attention. So I'm saying, and this government has gone ahead and provided tremendous support. We even bought items, assistive devices, even simple things like canes, to assist the blind and so on, and distributed them. We have had a study done by the OECS Education Management Development Unit to ascertain the number of persons in our school system with disabilities and the type of disabilities. You have that report, we're going through it. We have brought here an expert from Cuba, and she has done the first leg of her work. She has submitted a report, and we are trying to get her back to complete that in September term. And we had a pilot project in Beckwith. Yes, as much as we talk about Fair Government School, and they are doing excellently, but we had a pilot project in Beckwith, and again, we are going to follow up on that and come back to Fair. We have a magnificent collaboration going on between ourselves, the school, and the Church of the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, where they have invested significant sums in building the capacity of that school to cater for the needs of these students with disabilities. So, as I said, I was not so surprised with the performance of the students from the school with special education needs in Kingston, because I know what is happening throughout the system. And I know we are going to tighten it even further, so that when we talk about no child being left behind, we're not just talking about children without disabilities, but we're talking about all children. Yes? So I just thought I should share those up front.
Philbert,
I just want them to comment on the significant difference between boys and girls in taking the top 10 into consideration. In the top 10, there were 8 boys.
Yeah.
And traditionally, every time we discuss these exams, there was a tendency to focus, to highlight the girls, because the girls apparently are doing better.
Pigeon, let me put it this way. The girls continue to do better overall than the boys. And it is also borne out in this year's result. Of course, it's true the gap is closing, But I think I must state that fact up front. Yes, the boys have, and this is not the first time, the boys have been doing good. And I don't like use the top 10 school business, but as you see in the ranking of the top students, okay, the boys have been doing well. Yes, it interchanges. Don't forget, Peter, if it wasn't last, it was year before. We had 8 out of 11 of the top ranked students being boys. Pigeon, and you would know as someone who has been in education for all your life, and you have looked at some of the research. And we have been saying that for a while, and I must refer, I must reference Dixon Finley. Yes, the Chief Technical Officer in the Higher Education Department. Dixon always remind persons that when you look at some of the research, you will see that boys in, okay, let us use the, for want of a better description, economic situation of the students. Middle class boys and middle class girls, when they compete, the tendency is for the middle class boys to do better than the girls. And this research is there, generally speaking. So what I would say, clearly, we have had a challenge with our boys in the schools, and there are various reasons to that. But with the new focus where you have less students now to a teacher, you're finding now that you have more time to provide the sort of support to the boys that you might not have been able to do. Now, it is established that where the academics are concerned, the girls within this sort of education system that we have, especially in the Caribbean context, well, I shouldn't say worldwide, generally, except in those traditional societies in some of the Pacific and African countries where females are not always treated the same in terms of education. But in our Caribbean context, where education is open equally to female and male, what you find, persons have argued that everything about this school seemed to favor more so the girls. And in a situation where the boys are developing later academically than the girls, that might explain why generally the girls tend to do better. But as I'm saying, the gap is closing, and we would want always all of our students to do well. Yes, and so I'm happy when the boys perform equally as when the girls perform. So the thing is, though, where there's marked difference between the performance levels, we must do the necessary investigation and make the targeted intervention. In fact, I would say this: there is a big activity that is planned for Jamaica later this year, where we would be discussing the education system and boys' performance. Yes, although, and that's throughout the Caribbean, although I've been hearing that that activity might be postponed, but at least the Caribbean has come to grips with the phenomenon and is seeking to do the necessary investigation so we could get targeted intervention. But as I'm saying, in the meantime, we are doing what we can. Look, don't forget, some of our primary schools have gone ahead and done initiatives that are encouraging to the boys. I mean, immediately one that comes to mind is the whole thing about having the fathers come in and do mentorship and thing with the boys. That is a popular program. I know in some of the
And you're saying it's popular in St. Vincent?
Yes, several schools undertake programs like that.
And you figure it's making a difference?
Yes, I believe so. Ultimately, all these things would add up with the teachers' intervention, the focus on the male and training of parents. I mean, all these things will add up. And of course, more and more, as you make the classroom more and more interesting, especially the boys would come on. Don't forget the impact of also the digital devices. That also would help because every young person have great interest when it comes to the use of the digital devices. But you know the boys, they go. So I'm saying that, I mean, once we continue to do these things to attract the boys and keep their attention, they're going to continue to do well. But we are not there yet, I must say. There's still a lot of things we have to do to make the school more exciting, not just for boys, but for all learners in particular.
Now, the CPEA, right, brought with it a significant change in the format of the exam.
Yes.
Where we have now the internal assessment and the external assessment.
Yes.
Are you in a position to say what is the difference, if any, between the external and internal assessment in terms of the performance?
Well, generally speaking, Pijan, students, just like at the secondary level, students tend to do better at the internal assessment than at the external assessment. And this is despite the fact that we have been working hard to make it comfortable in terms of the environment for the students when they write the external component. Remember, not too long ago, it was a one-day exercise, and you had to do all 4 subjects or 3 subjects, whatever the case might have been at that time. Now you do it over 2 days, so you have a little more relaxation and so on. And I believe that is helping too. But generally, of course, with the support you would get for the internal assessment, you would tend to do better always at the internal assessment than at the external assessment. What I would say about the program is the great improvement, because now you no longer just have to do multiple choice questions as used to happen. That internal component is very progressive in that it involves the student taking an active role in their own learning.
And it tests a wider repertoire of skills.
Exactly. You have more skills
being tested.
Being tested within that component of the exam.
Another observation I've made is the performance of, if we use it, the top marks, the performance of our private schools versus the government school.
Yes. Oh, and before I forget, I come into that. Good point, Pijan. But before I forget, we must not forget, even though we say that, we always say this, that the students are challenged. But those in the Grenadines who are directly impacted stronger than most parts of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have to congratulate all the stakeholders, students themselves, the teachers, and everybody down there too, for their performance. Because don't forget, we had to split these schools. We had 2 campuses for the 3 schools, and yet the students didn't do too badly. Don't forget Canawan recorded 100% pass.
Yeah.
Wow. Myro, the number is small because Canawan, I think their number is like 32. It's just significant, but they recorded 100%. Myro is a smaller school, 100%. The schools and Union, one school recorded 91%, and the other one 77%. So even with the challenge, especially Union, where half the school up here, another half down there, I mean, you have to commend them because it wasn't easy. And I'm really happy that we are putting everything in place to ensure that the schools down there would be up and running for the new school year. Yes. Pigeon.
So what is
private.
happening? What is happening in private school that
Yeah.
is not happening in the government school?
Well, obviously, Pigeon, and this is a phenomenon all over the world, where you have private schools. They, one, generally tend to be very small. And they are selective in the sense of who will attend. They don't have to tell you no, but certain standards that you would have to meet might debar you. Okay? I'll leave it at that. But I'm saying they're small nature. Plus, and we always say this, despite the fact that in the public system you would have excellent teachers, principal, and everybody else, the private sector always will tend to have an advantage over you because they, with their resources catering for a smaller number of persons, will be able to always attract more of the skill set that you will need for the work. Although, as I'm saying right now, I can tell you in the public system, there are only, and I'm talking about teachers, persons who are employed as teachers. I'm not including the relief teachers because they are not really employed on a full-time basis. But for those who are employed on a full-time basis, if you check the number of qualified assistant teachers, there's a persons who have the certificate from the community college and those who have degree graduate. There are roughly about 105 of them who are not appointed, and we are moving to appoint those. And in that number, you might have to take out 50 something who just got their certificate last year. And normally the system allows for a time lapse before you're appointed because it's like you're serving a period of probation. Pigeon, you know that. When you leave college, you're supposed to serve for a year. There's the law level. And as a graduate, you're supposed to serve for 2 years. But we have been moving to appoint persons as soon as they qualify once we have the resources. And that's why the numbers are so good in terms of over 2,000 plus and only 100 and something persons not appointed. So I'm saying, even though I make the point about the private operated schools be in a position because of their financial structure, in a position to employ the persons with the sort of skill set that is required, I am also saying that despite all of that, I think we have been doing good in the public sector. And let me remind persons, if you look at the private operated schools, the number of students who are entered out of the 1,600 plus students is just over 100, not even 110. So when I hear people saying about this vast difference, it's not a vast difference. People look, and that's why I don't like the idea of top 10. Ultimately, I believe we put the top boy and the top girl and let these schools do the rest of it. Because sometimes when you talk about top 10, it gives a wrong impression. Because what people are looking at is the fact that in the top rank students, out of the 10 highest ranked students, 5 came from one private institution. Yes?
But why is it still allowed to happen, Minister? Is it the ministry itself that publishes the top 10, or where does it happen?
Look, what I have been following, this seemed to be a region-wide thing, which I believe was adopted from North America. You know, in the US, you have top 10 volleyball team, top 10 everything. And this idea, because this was not always the case. Peter, when we wrote Common Entrance, and we used to talk about the top 10, we used to say the top performer boy, top performer female. So I think that is where it is. We have been working to change that kind of outlook, because I tell you this, I know we took a lot of stick because we didn't do it last year for the O-levels. Yes? And you know, we have this tendency of putting out how many 15 subject and 18 and 19. So we focused last year, top boy, top girl performer.
But
right?
but Minister, I know you.
The schools have the records, they are doing their own promotion and so. What we want people to understand, Cecil, this is important to know. We have an open education system. We don't have zoning in the same way like Dominica has zoning, for example, and even Barbados. But Barbados does not have full zoning either. But the thing is, in our open system, if we keep promoting this idea that only some schools are top 10 or whatever, then you have pressure on those schools to take in students from all over the country. And you have the lopsided thing in the education system where you have school with 3 students and entering for a national exam. And we can't, as a government with responsibility, allow something like that to happen. That is part, and that's why I mentioned that part earlier. Now. That's a part of the challenge. Cecil, I give you the numbers just now. 3 schools in Kingston, and I name others, because other schools in Kingston are a significant number. But these 3 schools in Kingston, if you give, I would say, the country a chance, most persons would want to go to these schools. It's like what we had to fight, and it's still in some element, but what we had to fight at the secondary level, where everybody only wanted to go, and still some want just to go. These 2 secondary schools that have been with us for the longest period. Now, when we allow that to happen, it is negating our policy initiatives. I just talk about schools in terms of student-teacher ratio. And I'm talking about all schools. And in fact, some of the rural schools have better teacher-student ratio than some of those in Kingston. So we can't be promoting that we are trying to make all these schools, put them on an equitable foundation with the other schools, our basis with the other schools, so that you could have an environment conducive to the performance of students. And then turn around and say, well, y'all could go to these schools in Kingston. It negates your policy. And that is why, especially me, I can tell y'all personally, I'm very, very strong against this thing about.
Well, Pigeon has always had a position against that. Yeah. Pigeon and other. But I want to come back to the question Pigeon asked, and in terms of the differences in performance between the private and public schools. I was going to. Well, somebody sent a WhatsApp saying it has to do also with the level of education of the parents. But I think it's more general. Is when you say it's also the level of the extent really of parental involvement.
Exactly,
in the
rather than the education.
It's not the education.
Because
it's the involvement.
I can tell you, there are some. I was at one of these schools where yes, it's a grammar school, and there are some parents could tell you, in terms of certificate, if you're going to use that for education, they're not up there. But their interest and involvement, better than some of the more educated persons. I know you used to have to beg certain persons of a certain stature to attend PTA meeting or just come to the school. And I know other persons, I didn't have to beg them. They're there. So it's the involvement more so of some of the parents. It is true to say that sometimes because of certain factors, there are some parents who are more involved than others. But I mean,
but fundamentally, it's the involvement.
It's the involvement.
And would you say that, Minister, that do you sense that there's a growing interest in education generally in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
And yes, significantly. Cecil, let me just make this point because I know some persons might challenge when I say only 200, only 100 plus, less than 110 students from the private school. Now, that figure does not include the RC because I put RC under government assisted.
RC as in Roman Catholic?
Yes, the Roman St. Mary's Roman Catholic School, because the private schools are basically schools that operated on their own, basically. We only do regulation. We don't pay their teachers and so on. So I just needed to say that. Yes, but come back to the point you were making. It slipped me.
Sorry, which one?
The last point, Pijan, he was making there about
the difference between the private.
Well, I
Yeah.
said, is it parental involvement? But I was asking
Yeah.
further after
Yes.
that,
Yes.
if you've noticed an increase
yes
in the
the appreciation for
education in the
among
country.
all persons in this society. Yes, look, the education revolution itself built quite an awareness. Then people take this for granted. But not too long ago, when you talk about 4 out of every 10 persons eligible for secondary education was going on to secondary education, there are a lot of persons who would tell you, boy, if my circumstances was better, my son would have been at such and such school. No, you don't have that. Persons are going on. And don't forget, we have set ourselves a target of having at least one graduate from a tertiary level institution.
And by saying we, you mean the government has made a pledge.
Made that pledge for the society, and we're working towards that. So there's, and not only making the pledge, but taking initiatives to facilitate persons who want to go on at the tertiary level, ensuring that every secondary school age child is at secondary level. And don't forget that early childhood education too. And more, we're not there yet, Cecil, but more and more we are trying to make school more attractive to students by focusing more on the holistic development of the child. People tend to focus only at the academic component, but that is only one aspect of the child development. There are other sports. Look, we are talking about TVET, and I need a whole program to talk about TVET because I'm so happy to be there with the sort of initiatives that we are doing in TVET. And more than that, we are not just providing support to allow you to access tertiary level institutions and so on and so on, but we are also seeking to employ you, one, and where we can't employ you, enhance your skills further through programs such as On-Site, that you just saw it. And On-Site is basically collaboration with the private sector and the Taiwanese. But we also have the SET program. And the SET program basically cater for tertiary level graduates. And we have now the YES program, which now is basically a level. So I'm saying all these things are impacting on persons' appreciation for education. But, Cecil, and I will end with this and that. The most important draw for the interest in education is the fact that persons have seen manifested before their very eyes. With an education, you're able to enhance your living circumstances for you and in many respects for your family.
And in that sense,
that is impacting.
So against that background, Minister, I want you to give a response to the fact that 900 persons from the St. Vincent Grenadines Community College crossed the graduation stage last week. What was it like? And not only that, the parents and friends and relatives who were there.
See the pride on their faces.
What is your? How do you react to that?
Well, sad in the first instance because PM could not have been there, and college fall under his ministry now in the higher education department.
Incidentally, he's listening. He's listening to the program, so we could pose a question to him too.
Yeah, and education. As an education minister, I got the message to sit in for the prime minister, but I was overseas and couldn't make it. So sad from that standpoint, because I really am happy with what is happening at the college. Mind you, and I always say this, we still have a lot of room for improvement. But certainly, when in 1 year, you have 900 graduates in all the different fields that you can think about. Because don't forget, it's the division of teaching education, the division of nursing education, the division of technical vocational education and training, and the general, the academic program, science, humanities, and so on. You must be happy when you see our young people out there. And why, Cecil? Because we have a few young persons misguided, and they're involved in what I term antisocial behavior. Some of them serious cases of crime. But these are the people who generally get the headline. But when you see 900 of our young persons crossing the stage, man, you must be happy knowing that most of them are going on to further their education, whether it is in the technical field, because we have done a lot in promoting technical vocational education and training, and persons are seeing where can make a career out of that. So whether it's in that field or the general academic field or teaching, nursing, I mean, you have to be happy, because all of this is having a positive impact on our development. Don't forget, our economy is expanding. Our tourism sector has grown by leaps and bounds. You need persons there. We are talking about establishing STEM education laboratories so that we could continue to put ourselves in a position to truly embrace and employ science, technology, innovation as a tool to dealing with some of the pressing issues, challenges that are confronting us. These are the people who are going to lead that push. Of course, some of us would be gone, but what we are doing, we are preparing the foundation for that sort of takeoff. And when your people understand and embrace that vision that you have, you must be happy. And that is a manifestation of the people's support for the vision of this ULP administration. One thing, I'm glad you mentioned, it's not just the students, but the parents and guardians. And I was watching from overseas, and you could see the pride on the faces of these persons. Yes,
I have a sticky question to ask. Are you able to determine whether or not there was any impact on the results for teachers who had to leave the system because of the COVID mandate?
When you say whether they impacted on the performance, at least at the primary level.
Well, at least at the primary or whatever level.
I don't know if I could say that. I guess, obviously, in the initial stage, there might have been cases. Let me remind you, in 2020 and 2021, remember, because of COVID first and then the volcano, we had an arrangement with CXC to do only one paper. And those are the years when we recorded the highest pass rate. Now, when we went back to two papers, we dropped to one. It wasn't the lowest, but it was certainly lower. I would say one of the lowest performance since this government, this ULP administration took office in 2001. And I remember I had to explain nationally the reason for that. But by the next year, the result went back up to the extent that last year with the CSEC level, we were less than a half a point of where we were in 2019 with regards to the result at CXC level. Where the primary schools are concerned, the results have been trending upwards. Not too long ago, it was 85%. Now it's almost 88%. At the community college level, again, the results are basically consistent. 1 year might go down past by a point, but not significantly more than that. And the next year you come up. So, and it is high. The performance at the community level.
So the talk of a gap or gaping hole left.
Well,
as a result
you notice
of
I
this
post
teacher.
something like that. Some people didn't like it, but it's the truth. This
I think
thing
sorry,
about
what I'm
the
trying to
Sorry,
reflect.
what is the
that's a
truth?
personal post.
No, but what is the truth?
No, I was saying that there are those who are saying that there's to quote them, a gaping hole in the education system because the government fired the qualified and experienced teachers and replaced them with unqualified and inexperienced persons. They even call them teachers. And I'm saying the results do not bear out that.
Okay.
And
I think that's the point I'm trying to get at.
Right.
Yes.
The result do not bear out that. And to the extent that we had to cover for those persons who did not return, and I always have to make the point, the vast majority of the persons return. It's true at different times, but they return. And even since the court case, we have had some who had stayed out returning. And I suspect by September, we're going to have more because persons
September upcoming.
Yes, upcoming.
So those stage continue to return.
Yes. And don't forget, other persons move on with their life.
Yes.
Because especially those teachers who are not in the system for a long period, who did not return, they have moved on in their life, doing other things. So I would say that it doesn't, that statement isn't backed up by the results. And one must not forget, however, that the persons who were also employed as cover for those who did not come back, a lot of those persons were trained teachers too. Now, when Pijan and I, when we were in the system, you had to go to school first, and you had to spend like 4 years, Pijan, before you were taken to teachers' college. Yeah. And I remember people like myself and Pijan, we were part of the groundbreaking group, F2, Pijan, because in that group, most of the students were graduates of secondary school who did not go through the pupil teacher system, and who were not teaching for no 4 years. In many of our cases, I had 1 year, Pijan probably had 2 years, and so on. And I know one guy had less than a year, Steve Stewart. And we had the best result up until that time. And after that, that is what happened. So I'm saying, what we have reached a stage now where we basically, to be a teacher, you have to go to teachers' college. Yeah, we're not employing you as a full-time teacher.
So those who replaced, those who left,
we had some
trained. Some trained teachers.
Some were trained. Some were trained.
But some were trained. And in other instances, you had some who were in the classroom because of the set program, so they had experience. And obviously, you would have had a few new one altogether. But I would say that the vast majority had some level of experience. And if you could point at any downward trend in the result, it was only in the year 2022. And significantly in 2022, that is the year when we return to writing the 2 papers. And I argue strongly that that would have impacted the student.
And not the departure of...
Not so much the departure. Okay. As I'm saying, I would not say it might, because in a school, for example, you have a dedicated teacher, and we have to give Jack the jacket. Some of those teachers who left were experienced teachers, yes, and committed teachers. And clearly, where you had such teachers teaching some students and had to leave, the replacement would have had to be excellent to meet that same level. So it must have had some impact. But again, I want to commend the Ministry of Education as well as the principals, because in a lot of schools, Pijan, they made the adjustment. In other words, you don't just take the new people and put them into certain classes, but the internal adjustments were made to allow for experienced persons from another area to go into certain critical classes, so that the impact would not have been as significant.
All right.
Curtis, you suggested that the government as a whole has made education more attractive for the population.
Yes.
Could you now speak about some of the non-formal programs that is like is outside of the school system that is happening now that persons are clinging to?
Well, I mean, I would put a great deal of support and promotion of certain programs done by Forces State itself, Adult Education Unit. In fact, we have seen the potential of some of those programs, so much so that in collaboration with the community college, we are now going to have the college delivering some of those programs for certificates. Because let's face it, we have to have recognized certificates if people are going to get employment. And where we might not have been able, even if we produce a certificate at the adult education unit, might be as recognized as, say, coming from the community college. So I'd say there's one. There, Pigeon, there are a lot of other programs by the ministry itself too, but more so I would say in this area, we're talking about parental programs. The Ministry of Social Development, I have to commend them in terms of running some of those programs. I say our ministry too because through the department, well, I don't want to call it department, a unit, the reconciliation unit, they do some of these things and they do anti-vandalism and so on. But I'm just saying that some of these assist. But I would say the programs that have the greatest impact are those programs aimed at skills training. Yes, and we have a number of private persons involved, but the government itself is playing a leading role through the Sector Skills Development Agency. And I mean, we also have a powerhouse who used to head the Barley Technical Vocational Education and Training Center, Mrs. Paulette Hanaway Primus. I mean, Paulette is doing tremendous work, getting attachment, which is another thing. We are not only doing it at the level of the schools, but we are doing it outside of the formal school system. And all that is impacting on the greater appreciation for education and what education can do. I always have to make this point, though, that we do not see education as a balkanized unit with different components that are operating individually and separate from each other. Is a connection between them. So I say this because sometimes when you listen persons, you listen to the opposition, for example, sorry to say this, but I say that because they say it a lot. They give the impression that, okay, too much academic, so let us go to TVET and more TVET. But you can't have TVET without the academic foundation. So what I'm saying, we see it as an integrated process where you must have a level of basic education that would allow you to make good gains from what you would be exposed to in the TVET or skills training component. And basic education is no longer just primary education. A basic education now, Pijan will tell you that, must take you up to at least the first three forms at the secondary level. And where we are talking about the establishment of STEM laboratories here, because we see the importance of, as I'm saying, science, technology, and innovation. You know, in our ministry, we just produced a draft working with ECLAC and another regional institution of a draft science, technology, and innovation policy. It is before cabinet. But the point I'm making, all these things are interrelated. You don't have them operating in silos. And that's the point I want to make. So even as we say this about education, we see integration, education as a holistic strategy for the development of our country. Yeah.
I haven't seen Professor Robinson on the line yet. So and we kind of getting close to the to the point where we have to end the program, but we're still a good way from it.
Yeah,
But I want to ask,
oh,
I
yeah.
want to invite persons to link us, call or send WhatsApp messages. Some have been doing that already, or call us on WhatsApp. 4579997 is the number. But while we are doing that, Minister, I want to ask, can you establish a link between what is happening in education and generally what's happening in the country in terms of the economy and tourism and different things? But before you do, there's a call coming in. Let's take the call in as much as you're opening up for calls. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Franklin Brown.
Hi, Frank.
Now, I agree with you guys in terms of the private schools, their performance, in that most of the students, they came from affluent people who had the resources to push them in terms of evening classes and those sort of things. I mean, I could talk from my own experience. I was not privileged to have those things, and I kind of suffer because of that, like going to evening classes and those sort of things. And my sons and them, my first son started off going to the public school, which is prep school, and then they moved to the private schools, which their syllabus was a little bit different than the private school. I mean the public school, in terms of they kind of gear them for critical thinking and doing projects and those other things, which I think the public schools are doing now. So it kind of prepare them for life, not just getting an education. So the private schools, as I said before, they had the resources, and most of the parents are people who went through the system. Like, I could talk about myself, me and my wife, who went through the system, so we know what it takes, you understand? And we encourage our children to read a lot. I mean, study the book, and they did well. While some of the people them who go to the public school, I mean, some of them only go because school are mandatory. They didn't have nobody to really guide them and tell them the importance of education. Even when I went to school, that was something that was very lacking from my parents. I mean, you see school. I mean, some people see school as you forcing you to go to school, but they never really come out and say, but once you go to school and you get a good education, you could get a good job, go to university, and so forth. So education is very important, and I mean, it's something that had helped me to propel to where I am now, and I do a lot of mentoring in terms of encouraging people to go to school, study hard, work hard, get good education. Because once you have education, I always say education is the surest way out of poverty. In that once you educate yourself, you eliminate your chances of going to prison and those other things, because I mean, you don't look at becoming rich fast. But I mean, once you get that, you build yourself, and then you be a good citizen. So
Yeah.
my conclusion is that tell me.
No, I was just saying, I want to publicly acknowledge your support too. I mean, you and I know what we are talking about, but you have been one of those individuals who have consistently been supporting. So I put you under the name of sponsor. Although I didn't want to say it publicly. God don't want to run
No,
every
no, no,
day.
no, no. Yeah. No, 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 no.
If he is a sponsor,
Not if,
or if
not
he's a
if,
support.
I'm
No,
telling you.
I'm saying
And
no, yeah,
not
but
just now, long.
no, I know, but I'm saying he is, therefore acknowledge it. I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, it happened.
And let me tell you something, Cecil. When I was going to school, I wasn't fortunate, as I said, as some of the others, in terms of resources. But I knew once you got a good education, that is the way out. And as Mr. King said, I try to assist and help people who come from poor family, because it ain't easy when you go in school, because sometimes once you don't have lunch and them things, you cannot concentrate properly. You're thinking about as it comes closer to 12, your concentration span break, because you're thinking about how are you going to get lunch, whether you should go down the road, and then you might end up in a supermarket, and then you might get tempted and shoplift and all them things. If you're not from a good household, but luckily that I came from a good household in terms of discipline and those other things. They instill certain discipline that you shouldn't trouble what ain't belong to you and those other things. We never had no money with issue home, people stealing and those other things. So that kind of helped me a lot. And I being the force of who I am, I mean, I made it from education. Because without education, I would not have been where I am now. And I try to assist the less fortunate. Now, there is a guy, a neighbor, which is next to me, where I grew up. And he passed common entrance. And we decided, me and my wife decided that we're going to help him. Help him in terms of books and get into school and lunch. Because I know his parents can't afford that. And once they can't afford that, he might end up dropping out of school. And my parents used to always tell me that there is this girl who used to go to high school, a relative of mine. And because of poverty, she ended up having to stop with school. And I don't want to see that. I'm in a position that I can help.
Okay.
And I'm willing to help.
Cecil, I just want to make a
Frankie,
quick response. Yeah, I know it's Frankie.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, man, I know it's Frankie. Yeah, a couple things. One, the government, through its social protection program, through the Ministry of Social Development, we provide support for students to stay at school. That's why earlier I mentioned, when we talk about stakeholders, I mentioned Ministry of National Mobilization and Social Development, because they assist. Because remember, our thing can't just be saying no child should be left behind. We have to put in place the policy to effect that. So I could tell you about that program. And of course, well, you know about school feeding programs and so on.
Yeah, secondly,
and importantly, I wanted to respond quickly to what you said with regards to the private and public schools. And you did agree with Cecil and I think Pijan too, in terms of the resources. But I want to illustrate something, given the example you used with your son. Now, what I would say, and that is why Cecil and I argue strongly, more so about the involvement of the parents more than anything else. Let me tell you something. You check a private school might have 10 students in a class, and they could do all the support that they want to provide. And I call the same school you call, the prep school. There are 108 students, but only one fail. Huh?
Yeah.
So yes, the 10 going to get all the promotion, but you can't discount the importance of the involvement of the parents and other factors, because here you have a public school with all, and that's why I always stress. Parents have to support their children. And we, where parents don't support the children, have to provide that support. You know, the government, for example, as you mentioned, lessons. We took a decision this year that we know some children are not going getting lessons because they can't afford it. So we're going to level off the playing field by paying for that lessons or extra classes. So the point I'm making, I think a lot of it is being said about the private entities, because naturally, once they are in the top placement, that is the issue you're going to have. But don't discount the effort to.
No, I'm not discounting the effort. The government is playing a good role. You have plenty better teachers now than before. More qualified, and those other things. But what the point I want to raise, King, and the other people on the panel, is that once you went to university, you reach to that level. Like me and my wife, we went to university, and we know the runnings. We know what it takes. You understand? So you are in a better position now to assist your child. In terms of you went to the system, you have the experience, you have the resources, now the finance, and you can push them. While there are other students in the public school who don't have that same privilege. Privilege as we, because we know what education has done to it. And as soon as my boys and them finish college, we send them on to university. You understand? Because we know without a university degree, they would not be able to make to get a proper job and also get good rewards in terms of salary and those other things. So we push it. But there are people out there, I just tell people, there are people out there who are brilliant, but sometimes it's the resources and the guidance they don't have. You understand? There should be a little bit more counseling in school in terms of mentoring and getting people to do certain different areas in terms like the technical areas. Because you go to school, your friend might want to become a lawyer, they might want to become a doctor, a chemical engineer, and then you might say, boy, this is my friend. I want to become a chemical engineer too, by just because of your friend. But if you have people like career fair and so forth, this is thing that I like to do. Because I used to do it at grammar school, go in and teach, tell them about quantity surveying and those other things. And the students and them used to enjoy that, you know. And these are the things that need to happen. My son started the Wrong Initiative, introducing students from Farm 4 into workplace, and some of those students who went to those workplaces love what they are doing, and these are the things that we need to do. You understand? Because a lot of students, they just suit from their friends, right?
All right, yeah.
So if we could get people like from Vinlek, Water Authority, the different areas to go in and talk to the students. That there are a lot of professionals out there that they're not aware of. You understand?
Yeah.
All right, Frankie.
So these are the things. And the government is doing an excellent job in terms of the education revolution. I always say it's better to have something in the head. You taught a man at school, he done there. You send him to school, he gets something more in the head. A lot of people saying it's a waste. Well, it is not a waste of time. Because you have late learners, you have people who fail common entrance and come back and get island skull. So it is not the education revolution. It's not a waste of time. I have a friend who went to school with me, primary school. And they used to have 2 classes to junior 5. And he went to the junior 5 that go to seniors. And that man cried. I tell you, he cried because all his friends and them went to the common entrance class. And he never had the opportunity. And now the government is sending everybody.
That's right.
And even though long time in the common entrance class, if you have 15 students, sometimes they used to send 4.
because they used to have a free
It
test.
used to be selective.
Yeah, they used to have a free test, and it's only who passed that test when to write the comprehension, and sometimes you have a bad day. When you're from a rural area, that is full. You have a bad day, you didn't eat or nothing. And your parents might have something home, they might have a little fighting. And then you go to write the exam, you can't concentrate, and you fail the exam, you can't write it. But now, everything changed. Everybody have an equal chance of going to a secondary school, which is what I like. And I would always support this government. I would make it publicly that I would support this government because of what they're doing to education. And with that, I rest my case. I listen to you guys.
Thanks for calling. Have a good day. All right,
Oh,
good.
nice, thanks.
Good. Interesting. He says the rest is good.
He put forward a long plea there.
Yeah, I just want to read a message here from somebody who says, Dr. Ben Carson, in his book, Think Big, said that his mother, who could hardly read at times, checked his schoolwork while holding the book upside down.
See, that's the point I'm making, it illustrating the interest that parent had in not so much whether she was bright or not.
Is the interest, our involvement in the child's education.
And like he was saying, and I always have to make that point, we have said no child shall be left behind.
All right, Minister, we have a few calls coming in. I just want to clear the lines here. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good afternoon. Wonderful program. My name is Sharon Garraway. I'm the acting marketing assistant at UE Global Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent program. And Minister King, what you said there, education, is the way to enhance the living circumstances. We have seen that throughout the years at the UE Global Campus. And before I go into anything else, I have to thank the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for having the vision to put into the government tuition scholarship for advance themselves. The deadline is the 30th of June, okay? So Monday the 30th of June. Person sign up.
Which means that it's tomorrow? It's tomorrow?
Right, that's right.
So you have to give greater urgency to what you're saying.
Yes. So I had to call in. People studying can't right now. Everybody, having a good time. But take a few minutes, see what the courses are at the UE Global Campus, the offerings, and www.ueglobalcampus/apply, and you could just see apply for the government tuition scholarship, or check out our Facebook page, UE Global Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines. But we have to thank the government. We had a recent reopening, I should say, of the UE Global Campus with the state-of-the-art facilities, to the extent that the Vice Chancellor, Sir Hilary Bickles, called us the crown jewel of the UE Global. So, there was a little...
And I was unavoidably absent.
I realized that.
But Sharon, are you all observing any uptake in interest around those programs at the UE Global Campus? Yeah.
Definitely. We are the number one. We have over 800 students. Others, I think, are 600 St. Lucia. So we have the most,
Cecil,
in terms of the global campus. Yeah. So we definitely are seeing an uptake. Of course, as you mentioned, we would love to see more of the males. But I guess particularly it is what is being offered. Because what we do, we have short courses as well that we offer every quarter. So, and soon we'll be offering that in around September again. But short courses, 10 to 30. Some persons want to just do a little course just to upgrade their skills, or they've been in the service for so long and they don't want to do a full-on degree. This is a perfect way to, advance themselves. So we're seeing persons like males doing occupational health and safety, those digital marketing, those sort of technological areas and those hands-on areas that we're seeing that the males, but we're really pleased, we're really excited, and we're really proud. We thank the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the educators, the teachers. We congratulate all the students. We really, really are proud. We have a new head of site, Dr. Risa Noel McBarnett, and she's no stranger to the education system. She used to be the I think, head of the English department at the Bishop's College, and she was working in the personal development department. She was the permanent secretary for, culture. So we have a very strong staff. Staff who've been there for 30, 40 years, experienced staff. So we really, really are excited. Active, what do you call it there? A student guild, Mr. Thomas and others. So we really, really are pleased with what is happening with the Global Campus, and we thank the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And can you give a final pitch for tomorrow's deadline? I emailed you.
Of course. Yeah. What are you waiting for? Advance yourself. Take the opportunity. You heard it. Enhance your living circumstances. And not only your living circumstances, your family, those around you. When you enhance your skills, there's nothing, nobody could beat that. Nobody could take that away from you. You could buy the Gucci purse, you could buy the hairstyle, but what is in the brain? What are you going to do? How are you going to enhance your skills? So deadline tomorrow, Monday, online application at the personal department, or check out our UE Global Campus Facebook page, log on, subscribe, follow us, UE Global Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines, and you see the courses being offered. I retweeted your program, so persons will be listening and looking on as well. So we're really excited. We're really pleased. We have an excellent facility. Staff is on point. So we really are pleased, and we really are welcome. Apply online to the UE Global Campus. The deadline for application is July 31st, but the deadline for the tuition scholarship is June 30th, Monday, June 30th. So don't miss it. Don't miss it.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing the program with us this morning.
And all the best to you. Thank you again, Curtis. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. John, everybody. Mr. Ryan, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
The professor is there?
Sorry?
Professor is there?
I haven't seen him. No. We still have some time to go on. We have another call. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Cecil, good afternoon.
Lansford, good afternoon.
Minister King, good afternoon.
Good day, Lansford.
Yeah, my name is Lansford Weeks. Yeah. Minister King, Cecil, Pigeon listeners, I want to start by congratulating the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the effort that has been placed on educating our population over the last 24, 25 years. And particularly in 2005, when, in my opinion, the education revolution took place. That is when government used all kinds of creative means to ensure that a place was guaranteed for every child who was at the age to enter primary school to have that place. I think that was revolutionary. And since then, there's an evolving that is taking place where the system is getting better. We're seeing it in the results. We're seeing it in the width in terms of the number of areas that persons are now embarking and complete their studies. The places across the continent where Vincentians are now going to be educated. So, as I said, my opinion that the revolution took place in 2005 and the system has continued to evolve after that. I think it was indicated during much of the conversation today, but I want to say it explicitly that when we have these kinds of discussions, I think we can fail to mention Dr. Ralph Gonsalves as the champion of education in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Those who study change management would always tell you that when you have somebody to drive the change and somebody of the stature of Ralph Gonsalves, it assists tremendously. And I believe that a lot of the interest that you're seeing in education now is as a result of Dr. Gonsalves taking on that champion role in driving the change in revolution. He has been doing it even before he was in government, but more so when he became Prime Minister in Vincent and the Grenadines. He had more leeway in doing it, and we must congratulate and thank Prime Minister. Even as I talk about champion, I agree with those who have been talking. I think Minister King and Cecil as well, been indicating that it is based on the interest that parents have shown, that is one of the more important things in terms of the success of students. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And again, it goes back to the issue of championing. If you have a parent who is providing that kind of encouragement, that kind of leadership to the child or the children, the students generally, it helps significantly. The issue of the private versus the public schools and their success, I don't think it's solely on the basis of the resources that are available. I think more importantly is on the area in how the resources are managed and used. I have observed and I know that the private schools, they put a lot of emphasis on experiential learning, meaning that the children do and they learn from that. I know one of the schools, they employed 2 persons in their science department who are not full-time teachers. And that's what they do when they go to school on the day that they're to go there, is that they provide instructions that are not simply classroom type, but are in terms of experiment, in terms of going out into the field and touching and doing and experiencing. And as they experience, they learn. I believe if our public schools are encouraged and actually agree and do that, it can significantly improve our education system, especially as it relates to the STEM subjects, the science, technology, engineering, and math, because those things are really practical. And once you get children touching and doing and experiencing, I think it encourages greater learning. Even as I talk about experiential learning, Minister King, I want to indicate that I am a person who lived all my life with disability. It's not an obvious disability, meaning that you can't look at me and realize that I'm disabled. But during all my life, I have lived with it. While I can school with you, Minister King, most persons did not know the challenge I live with in terms of visual impairment.
Because I didn't know that.
And it has gotten to the stage where I am now blind. But as I said, I have learned a lot by doing. And I want to offer my experience to whether it's your ministry or some other part of government. I'm not asking for a job, and I'm honest in that I'm not asking for a job. But given my involvement in administration, in education, because I taught for a while, not as a formal teacher. I do not have formal teacher training, but I taught at the tertiary level right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the UE campus, and also in persons who are doing continuing education. As you mentioned, the use of the technology, Minister King, I have had to learn, especially when my vision started failing rapidly. I have had to learn utilizing the technology. And I would like to offer, in any small way, that the state requires it, or that I can assist in that regard.
Thank you very
in
much.
Going out,
Really appreciate
I want to encourage the parents of these students. And once upon a time, we could have been talking only about 30-40% of the students, but now it's all of the students who have just taken the exam, the CPE exam. All of them are now guaranteed a place. So I want to encourage the parents to be that champion in the lives of your children. Encourage them to take education seriously, because many of us can testify about the importance of education and what education can do for you in terms of life and living in the future. Guys, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Lansford. Have a good day. We just noticed that Professor Robinson has joined us, so we would be hearing from him now.
Those are the ones you have to get. Where you are mostly local monopoly. Yeah.
So Professor Robinson, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you doing?
We're doing okay. I'm glad to have you on now. We were hoping that you'd have been able to, and you're there now. And
I see my honorable friend is smiling broadly in the studio. Good to see you, Honorable Minister.
Thanks very much. And I know your timing is right.
But moderator, the minister has to face the bouncy bowling on his own, I'm not here to help him.
No, you're now on by yourself because he is just preparing to leave. He has to go.
Okay, so good to see you, my brother.
Yes, and thanks. And we'll talk.
We'll talk
publicly again on your appointment, and I know you will do a great job.
Okay, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated coming from you.
All right, so Professor Robinson, we're happy to have you, of course, always. And we have already made you an associate of the program. It's your turn, so you know you're there. But Joel is not with us today. He's otherwise engaged, and Pijan is here, so it's you and me and Pijan. The minister is leaving, so thanks, Minister, for being with us. And you might have to come back. You said you wanted to have a fuller discussion on TVET, so obviously we're going to have to have you back sometime soon.
Okay.
And
I have the official with me too.
All right, and we would like to talk other matters as well. So thanks again, and have a good day. Yes, Professor Robinson, we're with you now. All. Yeah, we're happy to have you to talk about the expansion, the growth and expansion in educational opportunities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Sorry, you couldn't entice you to stay from last week, but I enjoyed your presentation last week, and again, congrats as usual.
Yes, thanks very much, and certainly, I guess it was my first time at SVGC graduation, and I guess for me it was a visual of what an education revolution looks like.
Okay.
Because when I went into grammar school a long time ago, I always remember this, that there were about 28 of us, which was the lower sixth class. And the teachers were complaining about how big the class was.
Okay.
Because our upper six was about half that size. And it was really a small group of people. When I recollect, a lot of people in lower and upper six were really relatives of each other. So that tertiary education was really reserved for a small elite. So for me, it was quite amazing to see 800 plus people graduating from all walks of life. And it really was, for me, a visual of what an education revolution looks like. And I guess I suspect that it's become so normalized that people take it for granted. It's probably quite a big thing for me seeing it, because I had not seen that before. So I think that's important because when I look at it, you have about 1,700 kids or so taking the common entrance. So that's my recollection in St. Vincent.
Mm.
And when you have a graduating class from the college of over 800, it's a rough guide that about, close to 50% or more of in tertiary education reflects of an age cohort coming into secondary school. So I think that's really an important hurdle and really one of the benchmarks to assess the revolution. It would be interesting to see how those numbers stack up 15, 20 years ago when you look at the graduating class from SVGCC and the equivalents back then to the number of kids going into common entrance. I think that would give you a good sense of really that revolution in access to tertiary education, which I think has been one of the really important and significant developments in St. Vincent in the last maybe 15 to 20 years. And that building out enhancement of our human resource capacity is something we shouldn't sniff at. It's still our people are still our most abundant resource. And upskilling the population and having a much greater percentage of people taking part in tertiary education and the skills and opportunities that can come from that, I think it's an important element in our development, and we should avoid taking it for granted.
Pigeon, I think
Still on?
Well, he's there, but
Oh.
he's made his. Do you have any particular point you want to emphasize? Yeah. Okay. Professor Robinson, you basically point to the differences between 20 years ago, maybe more, and if certainly more than 20 years in your time and now. And I was saying to Minister King earlier, and I was asking him for his reaction to the turnout, not only the 900 students, but their parents who were there, parents and friends, and who were there, supporters who were there at the graduation ceremony. And you saying that was the first time you're experiencing that?
Yeah, so it was my first time actually being in St. Vincent and seeing a community college graduation. So certainly for me, as I said, it was an important visual for me with that gap of time, really seeing what. There's one thing to hear about an education revolution, is another thing to actually get that visual. And you could really see the sense of pride among those parents and relatives who gathered there in rainy weather, really that very proud moment, of their friend, their family, their offspring, really going through that achievement. And, young people could aspire to do much worse things than excel academically or achieve academically. So I think it's something we really should not take for granted. And I think the fact that our population is still so invested in education and it is an important thing because, as people take it for granted, you might think that there's some of the passion might go, but I really saw that this means a lot. I could tell that and the principal and I were discussing that on the platform. We could tell that a number of these graduates were the first in their family and that going through the process required quite a bit of financial sacrifice and family and friend support. And again, so my general message is that this is good, this is important. Let us not take it for granted. Because, when you have something, you say, oh, well, all these people coming out, where are they going to work? Why are we investing so much in this? You sort of start getting those questions. But to me, those are second order questions. in that persons with these qualifications, there's just a greater chance of them figuring out where they want to go next, and they have more tools, more capacity to figuring that out than persons not getting there.
Mhm. Would you care to offer some suggestion in terms of the association between what's happening in education and what's happening in the larger society, perhaps the economy? Would you want to make such an association or commentary?
Well, what I would want to argue is that what you don't want to happen in St. Vincent is that as opportunities arise, as the economy changes, because it's clear that St. Vincent economy is changing. We've been often been a heavily agricultural driven economy. We don't want to lose that. But clearly, services, tourism are becoming more important. We live in a digital age. Those digital services are becoming important. And what you don't want to have as the economy expands and as the economy changes, that the percentage of Vincentians who can take on the higher paying jobs is small. You want to have Vincentians with that capacity to really take advantage and navigate the new economy. That's where I see the education bit. And I think the SVGC, the divisions point to the importance of that, because it's not just the CAPE, it's the teacher education, it's the nursing education, it's the technical and vocational, and so on. And these elements are all very important if if our people are going to be able to benefit from the new economy that is emerging in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the changes that are in the world. So I think it's an important element that we don't want to underestimate, that we end up having to really import those skills and competencies, or even we can't take advantage because we don't have. So I see it as a really important element in continuing to drive economic growth and development in St. Vincent. An emphasis on growth and development, because it is conceivable that you can have growth without development. You can have growth where the local population isn't able to maximize if they don't have the qualifications and the competencies. Because qualifications and skills can be two different things, and I think it's important that people have both. So that's the nexus I see between what's happening there. And you see, one of the things I think has always bugged us in development is a critical mass of skills in particular areas. So what you tend to have is one or two people. So if you want something done in St. Vincent, you know the one or two people who can do it. But in a sort of a modern digital economy, and if you are to maximize, you need really a critical mass. You don't just want one good coach at one school. You need a minimum level of competence in sports coaching across the school system, so that you don't lose that one or two talented athletes, because you don't know where that talent would be. So having that minimum level of competence and that critical mass across the society is important, which is why I think the education revolution and really providing access to as broad a group of people as possible is critical, that we are not just reliant on one or two people. You really do need that critical mass. And I think that has been a major problem in our development. I mean, if we take an example globally, despite the policies of the US president in areas like the Apple and the computers, the US just doesn't have a critical mass of those skills anymore. You know, experts point to just the cost of doing those things in the US, but also they just don't have that critical mass of skills. So really building that critical mass of competencies and skills is just a critical element in the development mix that I think has been missing because we've tended to be rather elitist in how we view education. And I mean, and I have had to confront my own elitism and recognize it as such, because elitist has a negative term, but we sort of come up viewing, it's like my teachers complaining about how big the lower sixth form was with 28 people. Okay, it was seen as a thing for a small group of very bright people and people who can go and win the island scholarship,
Mhm.
and that elitist mindset, I think, is still very much there. But my own view is that that cream of the crop people are going to be good and they're going to be all right whatever happens. Is
Mhm.
having an education system that gives everybody an opportunity, gets everyone up to a certain level, so they can maximize their potential.
Mhm. Mhm. All right, and somebody, a colleague of ours from overseas, sent this question earlier. It was really meant for Minister King, but I'm going to read it so you can respond if get your own thoughts on it. And this is it. Are there any plans? Well, sorry, this is really for the minister. It's not. It's not for you. But she was talking about engaging. She was talking about the question of incorporating Vincentian history and civic engagement into learning outcomes, especially through project-based learning. So she wanted to get some thoughts on that. Any from you?
Yeah, I think those are important insights. Certainly, and I kind of alluded to that when I talked about the skills aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly, when I was in sixth form and in grammar school, doing O levels in St. Martin, there really wasn't necessarily a lot of emphasis on skills. It really emphasized your ability to really beat those books and pass those exams. So things like project-based learning, where you are thinking about application, you're learning to work in teams and so on. I think those are critical competencies as the education system evolves, that we certainly incorporate those elements. Where it's really not just enough to have the qualifications, but it's really about competencies and skills, and the qualifications is really certifying that the person has those skills and competencies and the ability to apply learning. I mean, I certainly know, for example, we have climate change. And it makes me wish that subjects like geography were taught with more an applied perspective. I mean, I think a lot of us were turned off from geography because it was such a book thing.
Yes.
Whereas, really projects around the natural environment. So I certainly see an importance of that. The civics and Vincentian history. And again, you have to constantly keep updating for the new environment. I think one of the issues now, as we have had some more development, maybe you might call it a little more prosperity, young people are physically in St. Vincent, but they might, not just young people are physically in St. Vincent, but they live somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that they might not listen to programs like this. They don't listen to the local radio station. They are watching CNN, MSNBC, Fox. They're engaging a lot of foreign. So their appreciation and knowledge of Vincentian society and its nuances could be surprisingly lacking. Certainly, when I was coming of age, we didn't have that access to outside information. You were almost forced to be local. So the current generation has the benefit of that global perspective, but it may mean that when we have them in the captive audience of the education system, that we need to place a lot more emphasis on Vincentian history, Vincentian stories, Vincentian perspective. And as I say, you constantly have to be adjusting that, civics. When I did the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank memorial lecture for Dwight Venner, I spoke a lot about social capital and its erosion. So that's certainly a trend we observe globally. I mean, people think a lot of it is driven by the fact that, things like private car ownership is a lot higher than before. People get out of their houses, get to their cars, drive to where they're going and drive back. They spend a lot of time on the telephone interacting with each other. They spend a lot of time with television. So that engagement with other human beings could be less than it was in prior generations. We look around, we see, and it's a global trend, membership in things like JCs, Lions, church attendance, a lot of areas where people learn civic engagement. That engagement is a lot lower. So again, maybe we need to use the time when people are captive in the education system to reinforce these values, which may have been enforced informally in prior generations, but now in this technological age and with the era of high car ownership, we may need to use the education system to invest a lot more in areas like that. So I'm quite supportive of that initiative, as we have to continuously update what we do and adjust as the environment changes.
Mm-hmm. We have, basically come to the end of the program, but Professor, there may be one or two persons quickly who may wish to engage. Let me just put the invitation out and see if we could have anybody calling in. So the number to call is 457-9997 if you wish to engage anyone here, particularly Professor Robinson. And you'd have to do it soon because we're just about coming to the end of the program. Actually, we have gone beyond the time. So 457-9997, and that's the WhatsApp number as well as the regular number.
In the meantime, Professor, what grade would you give to St. Vincent in terms of education developments over the past 10 years?
Yeah, I particularly I would give a grade A in terms of the compulsory secondary. I think that's really important. The developments at the tertiary and the significant investment in providing Vincentians with opportunities at the university level. So when I look at those three levels, I would certainly give a grade A. Across our systems, I would like to see a lot more attention paid to the primary level. That children are leaving the primary school with basic competencies in reading and writing and comprehension that they can properly benefit from. Expansion of opportunities.
All right, I'm seeing a number here. I just missed it. I suspect it might have been PM joining us, but I'll just wait and let him invite the PM to call back, because I think he may wish to comment on the discussion so far. I see other people trying to call in, but we don't have that abundance of time. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Ralph.
Hi, PM.
Good
Greetings.
afternoon, sir.
I'm very late.
Yes.
I've been listening very attentively anyhow.
Yeah, Professor Robinson is still online with us.
Well, as always,
PM, I hear you run from the dance off, man. I was waiting. I heard you were going to be on the platform, and I was practicing my moves to take you on.
No, I was not feeling well that particular day. So that's what kept me away.
Understand.
I'm okay now. Now, if I may just, Cecil, say a couple of things about the CPA results. I know we have emphasized all the central issues this morning, this afternoon, but I want the Minister of Education, I'm sure they're listening, I really need to know of the 1,689 students who are registered. 1,682 wrote the final exams. So we need to know what happened to those 7 students. Where are they? Whether they migrated, whether they were ill, whatever, because we need to get those 7 students. We can't lose them. The second matter I want to mention is that we need, throughout every single community, to talk about these results. The schools and the teachers and the communities, because we need to get better parenting and community involvement, and we need to pay a lot more attention to that we are improving in the English and mathematics. And particularly, we're improving significantly in the English, but we need to improve similarly in the mathematics. I also want to say to the teachers, I think that those of you who have not yet been appointed, having graduated from university, not been appointed as such, that we need to make sure that those appointments take place, and also similarly in the public service generally. On the matter of the post-secondary and secondary education, well, let me just pause to say this: we are spending about $200 million this year on education. That's a big number, Justin, a huge number.
Yes, massive, significant. Yeah, of course, significant.
And in the case of post-secondary and tertiary education, when we arrived in office in 2001, the numbers of persons who were enrolled totally in what we now call the 4 divisions of the community college, though they were located differently, like the School of Nursing was in health and not in education, not at the community college. We integrated everything within a few years of being in office. You had 400 and something students. Now you have 2,700 students enrolled. So you're talking about 6 times the number, close to 6 times the number. Well, more than 6 times the number, really, or close to that. And something of little note. Last budget year, 2024, we spent $45 million on post-secondary and university education, which is a big number also. But this year, when the discussion came up for the budget, there were some officials asking for us to hold strain a little in those areas because we had so much money to spend on Beryl. And my argument was for an increase in post-secondary and university, the allocation to post-secondary and university education. And we increased it to 60 million, an additional $15 million. And the rationale is very simple. I mean, we had a lot of houses to build. But Cecil, P. John, Justin, if you couldn't build all the houses at the same time, and if somebody had a roof where the galvanized was leaking or some kind of a problem, but there's a youngster, teenager, wanting to go to community college and can't go to community college because you cut back, or can't go to university because you cut back, that problem is compounded very seriously. But if you're still waiting for your roof to be fixed, but you nevertheless have the opportunity to go to community college or to university, a different frame of mind is put in that particular household. So despite the disaster which we had with burial, and we had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and we have done so far, we spent additionally $15 million than last year. We are spending that on tertiary education, post-secondary and tertiary education. And there are some numbers which are absolutely startling. I mean, last year, we gave just over 2,000 tuition scholarships. Everybody who matriculated to enter university, they got a tuition scholarship. And I'm going to do that again this year. And I hope people hear me and make applications. You have constituencies. You take mine, a rural constituency of just over 5,000 persons on the voters list. And that number is not in the country. We had last year, just for tuition scholarships, awarded, for this, the academic year just concluded, nearly 120 persons, and that was unusual. And in addition to those, there are others who won other scholarships. Right now, in Cuba, we have 48 persons who are studying there. One person is doing a program privately. But of that 48, we have 41 of them in doing medicine. This year we are going to send off 10 more students to Cuba to do medicine. We just graduated a group at Monroe College. There are 48 of them, 49. You saw that big graduation ceremony which took place in New York. Mm-hmm. We have a special program with Monroe College, as indeed we have with the University of the West Indies. And as Justin knows very well, there's a program which is being elaborated with the Five Islands campus in Antigua, which is under his leadership. And the numbers are just expanding. And we have in the works to set up a science and technology laboratory. We're doing the preparations. That is something for the next term when we get into government. One of the early projects which we're going to put into place. So what is happening in education is absolutely amazing. And just to go back, in 2001, there were 4 university graduates in the entire primary school teaching system. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they were not paid as university graduates because they had bachelors in education, and the then government said that they were only paying for degrees with specialized training. Now, take a village take a school like South Rivers with under 150 students. We have a staff there of about 16 or so. 9 of them are university graduates. Another 5 are currently studying at university. You see the numbers you're talking about, and that's not unusual. You can go across the country and find that, Cecil.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What
is taking place is absolutely remarkable, and Justin is quite correct. The critical mass is important for economic development and given the change in nature of the economy. And I'm satisfied that we are beginning to see the benefits of the education revolution in conjunction with other policies like those for infrastructure. You hardly have many persons who are graduates of the community college who are not in a job. Hardly. These numbers are relatively minuscule given the numbers which we put out. And similarly for university. And these in the last 5 years, the economy of this country has grown in the aggregate by more than 1/5. In fact, the last 4 years, really, by more than 1/5. It's a remarkable story, which is commented upon by the IMF. I don't know if you guys saw the report of June the 3rd by the IMF from the Western Hemisphere Department. And
I've seen quotations from the report, but not the actual. I've seen quotations from the report, not the actual report. But yes.
And it says that a critical page on the rail sector says, despite severe physical damage from Beryl, the economy continued the robust rebound from multiple shocks. Then the subheadings there, growth is supported by expansion in tourism, recovery in agriculture, strong reconstruction efforts, and large public and private infrastructure investment. Then the second subheading under that, under the rail sector, the recovery is stronger than in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union and the tourism-dependent Caribbean. The only place where it's stronger is Guyana because of oil. We have had and this economic growth has been inclusive, as reflected in all the data, with significant uptick in employment. We have in 2022, the real GDP 5% in 2022, 5.5 in 2023, 5.2 in 2024, and 4.1 projected in 2020, 4.5 projected in 2025. These are remarkable numbers, and we are having we are going to be within the next 2 or so months. We're going to be signing an agreement with Sandals for beaches, $375 million US, 375 rooms to start with. Then with the Marriott Hotel, that should be kicking off in the not too distant future. That's a 300 room hotel. The beaches alone is to be finished for the tourism season in 2027. That would require 1,400 people. I mean, it's to work. I'm not talking the construction, I'm talking actual working. And all of these things are tying together, and we are beginning to see the fruits of the education revolution. And I want all the young people who are listening to me to take advantages available there in the secondary education, in community college, the technical institutes. Curtis will come back and talk about the advances which we're making in TVET. And of course, the opportunities at all the various levels of the university. And students are now choosing a number of areas which are more marketable than ever before, while building their critical faculties, which is one of the important functions of education, to receive and transmit universal culture, including science and technology, but with a Caribbean particularity. I know your time is running out, but I think I wanted to make those points, and the teachers, the people in the Ministry of Education who are hearing me, I want to know what happened to those 7 students.
I have a question. Are you able to determine how far, how close are we to the 1 graduate per household in terms of statistics?
I have to get the Ministry of Finance to coordinate the data, but we are on the track. We're well on the track. P-John, well on the track for the college university graduates. We are losing a number. We're leaking a significant number. But in an open democratic society, that will happen, but that has its own benefits in terms of remittances. Because we have to stop think about the economy in any unconnected way. It is connected globally, regionally, nationally, and locally. And that's how we have to look at it.
And Prime Minister, one of the metrics that I was noticing is that the graduating class from SVGCC is really around 50% of the common entrance class, which I think is a very important development in terms of the percentage of an age cohort that's going on. And I think that's something we want to track as evidence of the revolution.
And if you would know that at the global campus, we now have registered in St. Vincent and Grenadines 800 and something persons. It's the largest single site for the global campus anywhere under the University of West Indies system. It takes 2 sites in Trinidad, the one at St. Augustine and the one in San Fernando, to equal ours. It's St. Lucia, which has 70,000 persons, more than population 70,000 more than us. They're about 600. It's a huge story, and this has not happened by accident. As I just told you, Justin, where we have to spend money, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on recovery, relief and recovery, reconstruction after burial, that we chose at the same time to increase our expenditure on post-secondary and tertiary education. That is something which other governments will go and cut. But I'm not going to allow disasters which we live with and have to live with, and to find ways and means of recovering to halt the progress of people's education. Fundamental. Those who prefer ignorance, however, can talk what they want. I prefer intelligence, and for us to develop that human resource. And once you have it there, nobody can take it away from you, you know.
Well, I seem to remember that it was Blazer Williams who used to say back in the day that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. I always remember that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for persons who get so comfortable, persons who support the government, I say to them, if you think government is difficult, try opposition.
That's interesting, Prime Minister. I'll say that's interesting, an interesting observation I'm making.
So I say that, I make that point to the faithful.
All right.
Don't take it for granted.
But Prime Minister, we have exhausted our time. Yes.
But I didn't want to come in earlier because it was good to hear other persons, and I want to thank Lansford and all the persons who recognize my own role in this enterprise. It's worth more than gold to hear your countrymen and women, expressing, well, not thanks, because I'm not looking thanks, but expressing that your individual effort has been appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your intervention. Professor Robinson, any final remarks? Yeah, because we just
so today, again, as I've been mentioned, it's really pleasing for me to see the tremendous strides made by the country in the field of education. It sounds a bit cliche, but our people are our most abundant resource, and developing the capacities of our people is absolutely critical. And I certainly want to commend the government for staying the course with this. Because one of the important things about strategy is that, we could debate about strategy, but when you pick a strategy, I think it's important that you commit to it and see it through and not be sidetracked. And I think the investment in health and education are two aspects of the strategy that the administration has shown that unswerving commitment to. And I think we are seeing the benefits. So I certainly give strong commendations in that area.
All right. So thanks again, Professor Robinson, and we look forward, as usual, to have you on. And when it's mutually convenient for us, and for us, it's very often it's going to be convenient for us to have you on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Take care, everybody.
All right, then. Thanks. And we want to thank Karen for being with us in an extra half an hour thereabouts, and thank the management of course also. We thank Prime Minister Gonzalez for his contribution to the program, and of course he singled out, and we want to single out Lansford for the rich intervention that he has made, and all the other persons who spoke. We thank you very much, Minister King. We thank you very much for coming in, and we look forward to the larger discussion on TVET. This has been a good program, and again, Peter.
Yes, definitely a good program.
Yes, and we want to thank all those persons who made it happen this morning.
And I may congratulate all teachers for their contribution to the development of the system so far.
Of course. I'm sure they're all proud, especially those from the SVG CC. They were all proud to see that 900 persons crossing the stage on which date was? I think it was, anyway, last week. It was really a wonderful spectacle. All right, with that, my name is Cecil Ryan on behalf of my colleagues here. We thank you very much for being part of our program today.